Welcome, my name is Kafui Day. 4th August in Ghana is celebrated as Founders Day. The question is, who founded Ghana? Before we get to the answer with my guest, I just remind you that you want to be subscribing to this channel and hitting the notification bell so that when brand new videos come up, you'll be the first to get the information. And now to my guest, who is a lawyer and a historian, a lover of things that happened in the past and how significant they are to the people of today and the future. Yaw Anochie Frimpong. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Happy Founders Day. And for me, the question is, who founded Ghana? It's a simple question, but it has possibly many answers.
Indeed.
Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, to start from the
Ghana.
beginning.
Where did the concept of Ghana come from, or the idea of Ghana come from?
It's like asking a lawyer, what is law? You understand? Then you are encouraging him to write a lot of theses because it's a very vexed question. Or asking a philosopher, what is the truth? It's not easy to come by. Now, when you ask anybody who founded Ghana, it is not an easy answer. And that will take you to the beginning of things, as you rightly said. The word, the name, the concept, the entity, Ghana, is first mentioned in the Sahara. Many, many years ago, more than 600 years before Kwame Nkrumah mentioned the word Ghana, at long last, the battle has ended, and Ghana, your beloved nation, is free forever. That was when we knew the word or the name Ghana. It was an empire. Today we say that it is traced to the area between Mali, southern Mauritania, and then the eastern part of Guinea. It was a very vast empire.
This is the Ghana Empire.
The Ghana Empire. And it was the first of the Western Sudanese empires. We had 3 Western Sudanese empires, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And we are told that Ghana, which was the first of the empires, was an empire noted for gold, very splendid. Anytime the mention of Ghana came in, you immediately thought of gold. And it became associated with us somehow because of certain similarities. For example, the people were surrounded by Muslims, but these people today we call Ghanaians, were identified as people who rather believed in ancestral worship.
Okay, so this is the inhabitants of the Kingdom of Ghana.
Ghana.
Okay.
They believed in ancestral worship. Secondly, because they believe in ancestral worship, they buried the dead with gold. They poured libation. Their women wore earrings, and they wore clothes as most of the Akans and then the Gans and the Ewes do. And they also discovered that some of the people were matrilineal in nature.
Just like the Akans.
Just as the Akans. But the bigger tribe there was called the Soninke, and today we have Gans and others, patrilineal. But the few people there, very, very minute people being matrilineal. And we discovered that we believe that they will be the Akans. And then after some time, the empire fell. It fell because Mali conquered it. And we are told that we continued to stay there until Mansa Musa came and ensured that everybody in the kingdom, in the new empire, Mali, would belong to the Islamic religion.
Mansa Musa is this king who famously went on
the pilgrimage to
Mecca and caused inflation in Egypt for
very good. Took
many
plenty
years.
Of
gold.
Our gold away. He went, and when they weighed the gold, it became the biggest amount that could be imagined anywhere in the world. And we are told that he's the richest man
ever
in history. But the problem is that he went with all the gold and never came back with it. And Mali was never to become as it was again.
And of course, I think they attracted the attention of the Westerners, and then that's how come we
Everybody's
had the Portuguese
attention.
and all these people coming down.
On one hand, he was a great man. On the other, he did us a big disservice. But what is important is the fact that our people, because of their religion, hated Islam then. Our people will also hate Islam because in those days, if you were a royal, you should ensure that, do you call it the knife or cutlass or machete would never have touched your body. And in Islam, you have to be circumcised.
Indeed.
And so in those days, I'm telling you the truth, the Gas and then the Northerners and the Ewes, the Akans, who are all circumcised today, were not. Once you're royal, you should not go through that. And so our people will have to leave that place because we are led by royals. And if my royal will have to be circumcised in order to have his peace of mind, then he will lead me to leave that place entirely. And we came along the Volta. The Volta travels from the north to the south, and we didn't know much geography. The only geography that would lead you secure, you would never fail, is traveling along the river banks, because everybody knows that the river will flow from somewhere as its source, and then the mouth is always the sea. So if you wanted to come down south, just use the river and it would aid you. So that was what we did.
So who were these people who left that ancient kingdom, the Ghana Empire, and then finally found themselves here in modern day Ghana?
Largely, they are we cannot tell exactly, but we can say that the Guans were the first to have left. The Guan people, the Akwapim, Efutu, Ewutu, Enum, Late, Nkonya, Wura. You understand? Yes. Those people. And then the Gonja people. Gonja people in northern Ghana. Yes, they were all part of this. Then after the Guans, we also came. So you will see that these people have language, the languages are very similar. And even when I spoke to many Ewe historians, I discovered that the link was there. The Ewes would tell you they came from a place called Ngochie. And they would tell you that Ngochie was the eighth settlement, their eighth settlement when they were coming down. And then why Ngochie? They will explain to you that it's an Akan word because we're all coming together. Why an Akan? We say, the eighth in Akan is called what? Ngochie. Ngochie. And then they will say, no, Ngochie, that's
the town in Togo, yes.
It's called, what is
Ngochie.
it? Very good. So it shows, I want us to think about the unity that existed, the oneness that existed. But the more you come down, the more we expand. That according to the famous Ewe writer, Mamata, it was their eighth settlement, and it was Akans who gave it that name. And it shows that they were all together from one source. Now, having reached here, especially among the Akans, they say that they were being chased by men on horseback. And so they got to a place where the horses would not be able to penetrate. That is when they got to the forest belt. And so the Akans settled there, and that was where they had the Bono Techiman kingdom.
Those on horseback, were they from the Burkina Faso area, the Mole Dagbani people?
From the Mole Dagbani people, because they were the remnants of these Malians.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So they were those made to chase us. So many would not go away, like the Gonjas. They stayed. The Gonjas stayed. The Mole Dagbani people stayed. And then the Akans also would come down to the forest zone. And that was where the Akans settled strictly along the Pra of Fin Basin, because they feared leaving the rivers, for agricultural purposes, and then for the fact that you would never stray anywhere. And those of the Akans who went deeper went to the Komoi Bia area, now in central Ivory Coast. But let's come down to our own story. We have started by telling you that the word Ghana is not an innovation. It is variously defined. Some people say it's the land of black people. And that is the reason why the Spanish and then the Portuguese, wherever they found black people, they called them Guineas. And then the English would prefer Ghana. So we have Papua New Guinea, we have Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry,
Equatorial Guinea as well.
Equatorial Guinea, and then we have Ghana. They mean the same thing, meaning the land of black people. Some people also say it means the land of gold, but at least they have the same meaning. And that also shows our nature. We have always been the same. Now, I'm saying that the word Ghana would not be the innovation of anybody, because it was the name of a certain group of people that lived almost 700 years before we came. So it is not a name that anybody coined. Indeed, in those days when the CPP wanted to win election in Ghana, they said Ghana stands for God has appointed Nkrumah already. Please, it's never that acronym. So that means that making the new country called Ghana is Nkrumah's own coinage. That one can never be accepted anywhere. Just as saying Buzia's name, which is actually from Busia, like a loan or a debt among the accounts. Some people, best university scholar in Africa. It's just a political word, a term, and you should not take that seriously. Now, back home, everybody would know that we were living peacefully until trade set in. Now, trade has always taken place on this land. We are told that the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians were coming to the West African coast, and some of our people were traveling even to South America. Trade has always taken place. Then the first one we could imagine in history was the silent trade, where the Europeans would come, not land actually. They will be on the sea and then light fires for our people to realize that, the people have come. Our trade partners have arrived. Then what they needed from our end, always things like dried pepper and then gold, if there were diamonds or anything that they needed from here, cotton, things that they needed from our coast. These people will put all these things there in lots. Then they will set fires again to tell them that you should also bring your goods. And then the people will retreat to the forest. And then these people will come and put their own European goods, blankets, schnapps, liquor, and mirror, all the European goods that we also needed. They also put this thing down.
I wonder how they determined their exchange rates, because they were not speaking any mutually intelligible languages. It was silent.
That's why it was called the silent trade. But it was mutually intelligible. That when you come and you see that your lot is still standing there, nobody has picked it. It means come and top it.
Add some more.
Some more.
All right. Okay.
So it continued, not knowing these people were studying us.
The Europeans
were studying us. They were learning a lot about us. So why do you think they will come all the way from where they will come from to our place to trade with us? I mean, they needed us more. They were studying that. Then what happened was some time along the line, some of their people who really decided to come and stay among our people, so that anytime, learned our language, so that anytime it became difficult, you could fall on the one who had come to stay among us, married our women. So we started having mulattoes. Then when they knew they could communicate intelligently with us, that was the time they brought Azambuja, Don Diogo de Azambuja. And we are told that Christopher Columbus was on that trip. He was part of the trip to meet the people at the time. And the coast. And we are told that they first went to Shama. And the people were very smart. They were sensible. So it means we are talking about who founded Ghana.
Indeed.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
The Shama people, looking at the massive ships on the sea and the gorgeous manner in which they were dressed, said, no, we cannot accept these people. And gave information everywhere along the coast that nobody should accept these foreigners to make them stay on their land.
Why?
Very highly philosophical answer. They say that you can see that these people have all the intellect in the world. Look at the way they are dressed. And look at that, their house on the sea, the ship. You can see that the people have got wisdom. They have got everything that man needs to survive except land. That is why they want a place to stay. So the moment you allow them to stay on their land, they will use their superior wisdom to drive you away and you have nothing to live on. So nobody should accept them except through the existing barter system. So the Shama people drove them away. And then the next stop after Shama was obviously Elmina. They came, got down and spoke to the chief there, Nana Kwame Ansah. And we know the story, F.K. Bua's history from primary school. Now, look at Azambuja's request that we have always been coming and going. Why don't we stay, build a house, pump in a lot of goods so that you will not wait for 6 months, 1 year or 2 years.
For more supplies.
Yeah, for more supplies. This one, you always have the supply. You just tell us what you need and then they come. And you too, once you have the goods, we also keep buying and then you will see the, what do you call it, buying and selling, flowing and everybody becoming richer and richer. Kwame Ansah said, no, you are making a mistake. You see, you spoke about coming and going. It is a relationship between the land and the sea. The sea waves will come down to the land. And the beauty of it is that no matter how it rolls to the land, it will go back.
It never stays there.
It never stays there. So there is that relationship. And you can identify the land, you can identify the sea, and then that mutuality between them, that play. And that is what I want to continue. Kwame Ansah would not understand. And then Kwame Ansah was looking, listen very carefully. Kwame Ansah was looking at the beauty, the glamour of these Europeans, how they were dressed.
Just like the Shama people were also looking at them.
We're looking at them, but the Shama looking at them. And then these people looking at it and say, look at the way you are dressed and look at how almost naked my people are. What Kwame Ansah did not realize was that the people he referred to as naked were wearing big gold bracelets, chains, big gold, solid gold. Our women, you know, those days, they didn't have this. They had something that accounts called, the Fantis called amuanse, you know, and then the Ashanti say tam.
Like a covering around the private parts?
The private part. So Kwame Ansah will see it as nakedness. But these white people realize that the one that goes around the waist to support it was full of gold.
Wow.
You understand? So
they were calculating the money.
They were calculating the value of it.
But because it was common to Kwame,
this one was nothing.
It's nothing.
You
it is
but the gold
the support.
Everybody, gold earrings, gold everywhere. You know, golden crowns everywhere. This man, he thinks his people are naked. They were not naked. You understand? So the more he thought his people were far naked and then they were nobodies, the more these people thought, no, this is a gold mine.
Is it a question of Kwame Ansah not appreciating the value of what his people were wearing or what his people
when
had?
When you are born into anything,
it's commonplace for you.
Yes, you don't value what you are born into. You don't. You understand? If you have 100 of this, you would want a Batakari smoke. You want smoke, suit and other things, but never the same thing because you have got 100. Because at that time, look at the name they gave to that place. Eventually, when he succeeded, he wrote home that they have found a place called the mine, La Mina, the mine full of gold. People, or even dead bodies are buried with gold, and the Europeans will not even believe that.
The mine.
The mine, Lamina, which today has become Elmina. So that was how it began. And I'm saying that if you are talking about the founders, don't forget Nana Kwame and Sam, because in every good history book covering slavery, colonialism, and black emancipation, they start from Kwame Nkrumah's statement that the moment we allow you to stay here, you will push us away, like the land allowing the sea to keep coming to cover the entire land. And indeed, ultimately, that was what happened. So you will see that an African more than 600 years ago was, and an illiterate person was highly philosophical. He knew the import of the white man staying with us here.
Should we also recognize the statements of the king of Shaman also?
The Shaman people.
They also...
Yeah, because for them, it was not one king. All of them saw that, oh, no, this man,
it's not going to help us.
No, this won't happen. So, and then gave information. I'm sure they sent information to Accra, to voter, to everywhere.
Watch these guys.
Those people who have always become, don't receive them. But before they could get to Accra or voter region, these people, the Elmina people had received them there. And then we will say that they put up a magnificent structure there, which is the first European building outside Europe. The first European edifice outside Europe is the Elmina Castle. Yeah. That is in George, that huge mansion there. And we are also told it is the first European building in the southern hemisphere of the world. So it's a very historic, a very classical building, which is left there for everybody to see.
Since the 15th century.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was what happened. Now, when these white people or Europeans started working here, I told you they were studying us. So from the silent trade comes the physical direct contact. So what will happen? This time no more barter, the money economy would come in. The money economy would come in. And then they discovered one thing, which is even in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's everywhere, it's part of European history. We being neighbors, definitely at one point in time or the other, we will be fighting. And then they discovered one thing with the African, that we believed in human sacrifice. So whenever there was war, let's say between I don't want to mention any
of the ethnic groups.
Yeah, but between ethnic group A and B, and then A was able to defeat B, those who will be captured, they use them for menial works, and then whenever there was festival or a big king dies, then you sacrifice
your head.
So the people will come in to say that, no, we need those you capture in war, whereby they will be safe, they will be protected to be used somewhere. Not just needing them. Needing them means giving them protection. No, we will buy from you. So it means that this time you are not destroying the person. The person you capture in war is of great value. So he becomes a piece of goods. You understand? So this led to massive wars on the African continent.
In order to procure people for sale to the Europeans.
Very good. Because when you talk about trade, it is just a mechanism between buying and selling. And what is it? Based on a certain commodity. And for as long as the demand is there must be supply.
So human beings, Africans became commodities.
Commodities, yes, because there was massive demand for slaves, goods. And then our people too were very ready to supply.
Didn't they realize what they were doing to their societies?
Initially, I would say they didn't realize. And that is where we are very guilty. We found ourselves very, very guilty, because it was not just selling vanquished tribes, but sometimes when you have plenty wives, I'm told, I read a piece of Akwamu history where a man would marry plenty wives, and then the ones who always make demands demand for money, demand for this, demand. Then you arrange with the white men. So you travel with that wife to one of the forts, James Fort or Christianburg, as if you wanted to do shopping for her. And then within the fort, you already make arrangement for her price. And then before she realizes he had been grabbed,
Oh, wow.
and the husband is left.
It's gone.
And sometimes your own child too, far away from, let's say, Peki or Keta. You see, the boy is very rude and insubordinate. You put some load on his head that we are going to this place. For today, I beg you, go with me, okay? If you're able to lure him, you send him to the fort, prison state, and that will be his end. They will ship him away. And then, in slavery, they didn't like people who were older. They like young, virile men, women, who could work very hard and also produce more children. So that
more
they
labor.
would not need to do labor, and they wouldn't need to come here all the time. So back to your question, I believe that we were very wicked to our own. Extremely wicked. So if tribe A is selling tribe B to the Americas, you can see how wicked we were. And then selling our own children just because we felt that they were they were very insensitive to our interests. And with that, Europe and America will develop because Europeans will come and buy human beings from here and send to the Americas, which had just been discovered, because I told you that Christopher Columbus was on the trip that came to the Gold Coast. And look at the name they gave it. Lamina, and the area is called what? Gold Coast, full of gold everywhere.
Gold everywhere.
So they had discovered America, which was the new world, vast area of land. What would they do? They would start planting raw materials and then ship to Europe, fruits and all the things you are talking
Sugar,
about, plenty
all
of
those
food,
things,
it will get spoiled. So that gave them, there's this account proverb, Ohiyama Adwenjen. Once we have plenty food and plenty goods from America, we have to think of storage. So it made these people to relax and then begin to think of inventions. You understand? Because they've got money, they've got the farms, they've got continuous flow of cheap labor. So let's use our minds, our acumen, to think of scientific inventions. So in a short time, the Industrial Revolution started in the UK and it spread to Germany, France, Russia, everywhere. So you will see that it is the same Americans. It was the British people who went to found America and a few French in Canada. So basically, America is Europe, offshoot of Europe. So slaves from Africa, goods to Europe, and then the raw materials to Europe, and then the finished products to Africa to foist the goods on us.
Triangular trade.
The triangular trade to compel us to buy. So no matter what, you will have to buy. So that was how the African continent became a fertile ground for all European goods, and that enriched them a lot.
Has anything changed?
Unfortunately, not much. It has even got worse. So my brother, what happened was that they used the silent trade to steady us. They used the slave trade to make us very weak, to make us very, very weak, to hate each other the more, so that when an Ewe man sees a phantom, I sees him as an enemy, because he will fight me and capture me and sell me to those people. So we became enemies to each other. Unlike previously, that we traded among ourselves, even if there was war. How long was this war? But now it became constant and continuous, because we had to satisfy somebody's whims and caprices. So the slave trade depleted the African continent until this one, Louis Farrakhan, will say something. He says the Jews were just a handful of people living in Egypt. Nobody was harming them or disturbing them in any manner. With that, God said, oh, I have heard the cry of my people, Hebrews. So he sent Moses and Aaron to go and save them. In our case, 300 years of slavery, and we never had any Moses or Aaron to come and save us. And the dark continent became almost depleted until men of good conscience like Granville Sharp, William Wilberforce, and later Lord Mansfield, who gave that famous decision that slavery was not good and abhorrent to the very conscience of mankind. And then slave trade ended 1807 thereabout. And then eventually the whole world thought of this abolishing slavery. No, the Europeans were not ready to let it go.
Because it was a very lucrative business.
So they had to find another way, something new to replace slavery.
I know for a fact that French landowners, slave owners in Haiti were compensated when slavery was abolished.
And you know,
paid a lot of
Britain
money.
took Britain. It took Britain more than 100 years for Barclays Bank and others to complete the payment of reparations to those who set free their slaves. And the slaves never got even 1 penny. The slaves themselves didn't have anything, but those who were asked to free them were rather given money. And then certain teams, football team, Liverpool and others, came up of slavery, slave business. The rich people, Barclays Bank itself was set up by rich people, millionaires who had made so much money from slavery and put their money together. The British warehouse, all of them, everybody was into slavery. So when the whole thing was abolished, especially by that famous decision by Lord Mansfield, they had to go around the law. They met in Berlin. You know, the famous Berlin Conference.
Yep.
So you see, 1807, they abolished it. By 1837, it had become universally accepted that slavery was evil and then illegal. Then only a few years, 1884, the Berlin Conference started to partition Africa among the European powers, the partition of Africa. And we also call it in history the scramble for Africa. After the slave trade had ended, now they needed actual territories here. So you know that Togo, the Germans will go there. If it is France, they will go to Ivory Coast, they'll go here, all those things. So
they cut it up like a cake, a wedding cake.
And the sadness is that, my brother, philosophically, they decided that if you are cutting it up, do not give respect to ethnic identities, but ensure that at all material times, the boundaries would affect tribes, will be in their middle, so that the one on the left, the one on the right, and the one on the left would fight between themselves.
Just like it's with the Nzema people, half of
half
it
in Ivory Coast,
half in Ghana.
Bassam, Assini,
and the Ewe also, Togo.
Just too bad.
The
and
Dagari,
then the Bono people, the same.
Yeah,
the capital of the Bono ethnic group is called Bono Manso. It's in Ivory Coast. You understand? Then German, that fought Ashanti consistently and should have been part of us, is also there.
The Dagari is also
the same thing. And then the Moli Dabani people, the Moses should have been part of the Dagomba, Mamprusi people. And then they are there. And then go to the Volta region, is even worse. You go to Benin, between Benin and Nigeria, is the same thing. That was what they did to us. So that to this day, there will always be that intertribal fighting. Then it helps the big man at the top to be relaxed and enjoy. So that was what happened. That made us to come under the white people.
So the Berlin Conference of 1884 was just critical to Africa?
Extremely crucial, because that was the conference that prevented Europeans from fighting among themselves. But for the Berlin Conference, the First World War would have started earlier, because everybody wanted to have a stake here.
They were hungry for Africa.
Everybody was ready to have a stake here. You see, the Ashanti Empire fell in 1874, the Sagrenti War. The moment the empire fell, the French came in. You know, Baoulé, Anyin,
Yes.
and then other then Zemas,
Yeah.
you know,
The accounts who are in Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire, they were part of the Ashanti Empire. Immediately, when they saw that the Ashanti power over them had fallen, the French came in, made negotiations, and took them away. So the British realized that they would lose every ethnic group that was serving Ashanti. And eventually, Ashanti too would be lured to go there, because where you have taken my son, I also want to be.
Of course.
You understand? So the British knew that if they did not do anything about this situation, Ashanti itself eventually would go there.
Ashantis would have been speaking French.
By now, yes. And if Ashanti goes, it means the other ethnic groups
Yeah.
that Ashanti was controlling,
Would have also
the
gone.
Bono,
Yeah.
the Achem, the Akwapim,
Akwapim.
Akwamu, and then Denchira, all of them would have gone. So you see the story.
Yeah.
And that was why a man like George Akem Ferguson becomes so relevant. You know, this man knew so many languages. He was a very young man. He knew several languages.
The Gold Coaster.
A Gold Coaster, a phantom man, you know, from Salt Pond. This man knew several languages. And the British sent him as a surveyor over there. And then also as a negotiator to tell the chiefs in the north, and not only the north, he started working in Ashanti. At that time, Bono Ahafo, they were part of Ashanti. That's why he started working for. He saw that Brekum wanted to join the French, so he had to go and then negotiate. The Gonjas, he had to go and negotiate. And then Northern Volta region, you know, today Oti
region.
the man went to all those places to ensure that they would not be part of the German area.
What was his assignment? He was surveying the land for the British.
Surveying lands for the British. That is the primary assignment. And as much as possible, because he had efficient negotiating skills, to be able to lure these people to come to our place and tell them why they should not join the French. That the English were very liberal people, very religious people, very kind people, very humane people, unlike the French who were using the direct rule system, the assimilation, you know, bullying people and enslaving people. The English were opposed. So by so doing, he claimed plenty land for the British. And it was in the course of this service that the slave raiders, Samori and Babatu, you know, killed him. His grave is still at Wa. And that is why people who know me know that I always protest against Ghana naming an university at Wa after C.K. Tedam, whose highest achievement in life was chairman of Council of Elders of the New Patriotic Party. You understand?
You think Akem Ferguson deserves that honor more?
He is a man of international stature. You understand? Ferguson did not hail from my village, Axim. No. I'm talking, we are building a country. We are not building a party. We are building a country. We are not building a tribe. You understand? So if Akem Ferguson, who helped for a while to become part of the Gold Coast, now Ghana, lies there, and then somebody who became chairman of a political party's Council of Elders would have his name decorated and celebrated. In fact, if really we have ghosts, this man will be turning in his grave.
So your argument is that George Akem Ferguson could
was the founder.
A founder of
because the
Ghana.
subject is, we are talking about
Who founded Ghana?
Who founded Ghana?
So he's one of them.
Yes. So I have mentioned Nana Kwame Ansah, and I have mentioned a person like George Akem Ferguson. Yes. But coming to where I left off, so we now begin to have different countries where they found plenty gold. They will call it Gold Coast. Where they found plenty ivory or elephant, they will call it Ivory Coast.
That's Cote d'Ivoire.
You understand? Where they find the river Niger everywhere, it will be Niger. Or where the Niger flows to so many what do you call it? Tributaries and distributaries. Then that will be a Niger area, Nigeria. River Senegal and Gambia, Senegambia.
There was slave coast too.
And then slave coast along the Dahomey area, plenty slaves. So we call it slave coast. So that was how systematically we began having our names. And then identity. Then, to cut a long story short, in the year 1896, here on the Gold Coast, the British brought the idea of the Crown Lands Bill to ensure that all the lands in the country not currently being used will be protected in the name of the crown. Then the people at that time, Wilson Say, JW Say, Mensah Saba, Hatton Mills, Kobina Sechi, J.E. Kisley, Hayford, and then Hatton Mills, people like this. Sat back and said, no. Why do you call it Crown Lands and not Gold Coast lands? Yeah. And because their education was very deep, they knew what had happened in South Africa. As soon as the Dutch got there, they pushed the black people far away to the very arid lands in South Africa and then Rhodesia. The English did the same thing. So these people felt we had to protect our lands. So they founded what you call the Aborigines Right Protection Society.
4th August
1887. Yes.
1897, I beg your pardon.
Now, the significant thing about the Aborigines Right Protection Society, which many people have forgotten, is the fact that the Aborigines Right Protection Society, you see the word Aborigine, it stands for indigenous.
Yeah, the natives.
So the aim of ARPS was to fight for the upliftment and eventually the emancipation of all black people in the world. Not just Ghana alone. That was what I want everybody to know, that the people were interested in the affairs of black people in America, in the Caribbean, in Togo, in Benin, everywhere.
So they were Pan-Africanists.
They were complete. That's the origin of Pan-Africanism on our land. That was how it started. In the case of the Gold Coast, they sent a delegation immediately. And that delegation was financed by Wilson Say, who was a very rich man at that time. And he was a fancy man. Then a Ga Adambe man called A.J. Okansi. A.J. Okansi also contributed money to it. You understand? And then they left. And the argument they went to put up in the British Parliament, indeed, they intended addressing the British Parliament, but the Parliament did not allow them.
What were they afraid of?
Yeah, they were afraid of our ghosts, and they also wanted to see the king. It was not allowed, but at least the petition was left, and then they accepted it ultimately. And in this petition comes the definition of land by this brilliant African lawyer, John Mensah Saba. He said that the concept of land in Africa was completely different from their understanding of life, land. And then they asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, in Africa, land is defined as that immovable property owned by the dead ancestors, currently in the hands or in trust of the living for the benefit of those yet to be born.
It's an all-encompassing definition.
So you see 3 entities here. Yes. The owner of the land is dead. And you, the living, it is in your hands as a trust. Trust means keep protecting it.
For those who are not born.
For those who are yet to be born. That is immovable property.
If we had this mentality with respect to the way we see land right now, I don't think Galamsey would be an issue.
So sad. And even in Accra, how the Ga chiefs and family members, I mean, as if almost for free. So I believe it's a big public education you are doing for everybody. That if in 18, what is it, did I say, 1897, that's what our people thought. And they spend their own money to go and defend something. Talk about the man we mentioned, Kisley Hayford or Mensah Saba. I don't think he even owned an acre of land. But he was thinking about everybody, the entire continent.
The dead, the living, and the
those
unborn,
who are yet to be born.
Yeah.
He was fighting for them.
I wonder whether the students of Mensah Saba Hall in the University of Ghana even know the significance of the man for whom their hall has been named.
Oh, but if the government, today's government, the Ghana government, knew the essence of what we are discussing today, whether it would have named an university after C.K. Tedam.
That thing is really on your heart.
I feel so sad about that, because if you wanted to name it after a northerner, then I believe it should have been somebody like Ndewura Japa, who fought and got plenty land for the people of Ghana, and it is now called the Savannah region. You understand? I mean, this country has never been short of great men. But if you can name an university after a party man, the next time when another party is in power, then they also name an university or the airport or a harbor after their party leaders. And then then who would be ready to die for the country?
So your argument is that people like Ekem Ferguson are founders of Ghana. People like those who were who started the APRS, the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, are also rightly founders.
The founders, you understand? Then they worked very hard to the extent that everywhere in the British territory, Ghana, they were even settling cases. They took so many cases from court and they were settling them out of court until eventually they phased out. But many of their people who were then young would ultimately become part of the 1917 one called the National Congress of British West Africa. Now you see that the Aborigines Rights Protection Society was Pan-Africanist inclined. But this one shrank the idea. Listen, National Congress of British West Africa.
They collapsed the idea. They made it smaller.
Smaller. Now we are thinking about how British West Africa could form one federation.
What accounted for that diminution of the vision?
Because you see, Sierra Leone, which had this famous university, Furabe, it's a very small country. And turning out so many graduates, they were not getting jobs over there. So many Sierra Leoneans will have to find jobs on the Gold Coast or Nigeria. Come to talk about Wallace Johnson and others. They would come here. Akila Pasoya, that family came from Sierra Leone. So they have to find jobs here. And because they were very well educated, highly intellectual, they were natural leaders. But you can't be a natural leader on a land which is not yours. So when you have the idea that we are bringing together the entire West Africa, then you can have a constituency within which to operate.
You can work anywhere. It's like the European Union, where you have freedom of mobility to move, to work anywhere.
That's it.
In the Union. Okay.
You understand?
So that was the vision.
Vision. So for all of us, so you see that Nnamdi Azikiwe and all others will have a place, all because it was for the entire British West Africa. Then it went on until some of their leaders, like Nanka Bruce, latter leaders like Nanka Bruce and then Awuno Williams would also begin to think about why not the Gold Coast alone. Look at where Gambia is. Look at where Nigeria is. Look at where Sierra Leone is. So they began nurturing the idea of having our own. Then in 1947, this man, George Grant, Pa Grant, who saw himself as about the richest African here.
He was a trader.
A trader. And was having problems with the white traders, They were competing unevenly with the local people. Let me tell you, his driver was an Englishman from Liverpool.
Power Grant's driver.
Yes, Mr. Holly. I believe that he should be the first African to be chauffeured by a white man. So he said that if a black man, my driver is a white man, why should the white man rule me and control my trade? So I believe I have to fight for independence. And that was why he invited J.B. Dankwa to Sekondi. He was living in Sekondi. That's why he had his headquarters. From Axim, his headquarters was in Sekondi. Grant.
Okay.
But he was always attending legislative council meetings in Accra. And that was where he met the Achimogbuakwa representative, J.B. Dankwa, and then Ga representative, Obechebi Lamte. So he called J.B. first to his office. And J.B. also met his colleague, R.S. Blay, a lawyer. And they all met, and he gave them the idea of forming a party. And then there were other people in the party, but what happened was that JB's interest was with people from his household more. So you see that Nanka Bruce was from Sierra Leone, who his parents were Sierra Leone, so you wouldn't say he's Ewe or Ga or Fante. But there was Ewe man, Awuno Williams, R.S. Blay and Zimmerman, and then this man, Pa Grant and Zimmerman, Obechebi Lamte, Ga man, then Akwaje, Ga and Achim, then the rest, always very, very close, as if knitted together, Dankwa, Pawuli, Ekufuado.
What was the relationship between them? They were all blood relatives?
Blood, see, this man, Pawuli, is a direct nephew to J.B. Dankwa.
Okay.
And then the other one, Ekufuado from Akwapim. And you see, the Akwapim stool is a sister stool to the Achimogbuakwa stool.
Okay.
The Akwapim one is Oforikuma, and then Achimogbuakwa one is Oforipeni.
Okay.
So apart from this blood relationship, he was also his brother-in-law. So they were always closely knitted together. And then when the idea came, they founded the party.
United Gold Coast Convention.
They scaled it down to the Gold Coast. So you see that from Aborigines Right Protection Society, that was Pan-African in nature, universal in nature, came National Congress of British West Africa, which was West African in nature.
British territory.
Now United Gold Coast Convention. So you see where it started from.
Narrowed.
So they were very conscious of where they were coming from, where they think they would succeed. And then the motto or the slogan, self-government within the shortest possible time. Why? Because it was made up of Gold Coast merchants, lawyers, and then chiefs who were friends to the British. They traded together. Many of them schooled together. And the very philosophy of colonialism was to decipher the brightest and the best of the Africans, give them education in the metropolis, the metropolitan country. If it is a French territory to France, English territory to the UK. And then when you come back, you will see that within the colonial system, you have your classmates, and some of them even Freemasons together, joining this group together, odd fellows here and there, together. So how dare you going to snatch power from them? You only catapult yourself to their level, so that whilst your own folks will be fighting somewhere, you black man, you see that you cross your leg like this, and Governor Goggisberg was your classmate or your friend, so you don't fear anything like again. So it's like the United Gold Coast Convention was just the extension of Governor Goggisberg's idea of Africanization policy. Governor Goggisberg said that you should push so many Africans into the civil service so that giving them about 100 or 200 years time, the British would phase out, and then black people, Africans, would begin to rule themselves. That was even a white man, that was his mentality. So he started education at Chimota School and helping so many black people to go into the civil service so that eventually we govern ourselves. So this idea of Goggisberg was what was purchased by the leadership of the UGCC. Then August, 4th August, when the same August,
Yes.
when UGCC was founded.
August.
So August, September, October, November, December, 10th December, they invited Kwame Nkrumah
Why did they do that?
because they needed a very versatile, mobile secretary. And many people in the leadership were big-time academics, merchants, or lawyers who could not spare their day-to-day lives for anything else. And Akwaje remembered that, you see, sometimes you can't leave God in whatever you are doing. Kwame Nkrumah had studied in the US. He had studied in the US and felt that instead of coming to Ghana straight away, to the Gold Coast straight away, he might not have any job to support himself because he wanted to do full-time politics. So he decided to go to the UK to read law, because it was their law we were operating here, not the US law, the common law, to read law, so that upon his return to his motherland, he will be doing law part-time to sustain himself and then do politics as well. And he had failed the entrance exam.
The whole of Sajifo.
Yeah, he failed the entrance exam. That's why I'm talking about providence, the role of God in molding human beings. I believe he wouldn't understand why he failed. Sometimes you go to school, you fail the O-level, you get 3rd class, you don't understand. Later on in your life, you understand why it was good for you even to have failed. At least the first thing that it makes you humble. You see that you are not master over everything. That humility can carve a niche for you somewhere else. So Nkrumah had failed in that examination and rather decided to concentrate on his PhD thesis. Then Akwaje told these people that man hasn't got any profession that would tie him down when he comes to Ghana. So let's go and bring him. And as for mobilization, he's number one. So they brought in Kwame Nkrumah.
So they must have heard about what he was doing.
His exploits, yes, because he was always doing mobilization. Don't forget, he was one of those who were the brains behind the 1945 Manchester All-African People's Congress. Yes, so they knew him, they had heard about him. And in his student days, Nkrumah loved wearing glasses. So they said the bespectacled Kwame Nkrumah. He was always wearing glasses, but he didn't have any defect. But it was when he was coming that he threw that thing away. Yeah, and people make the mistake of saying that it was J.B. Dankwa's money that transported Nkrumah to Ghana. Please, J.B. Dankwa was just a practicing lawyer.
Who brought him? Who
the
paid for his passage?
bankroller was definitely George Grant, George Alfred Grant. He brought Nkrumah and he stayed in George Alfred Grant's house in Sekondi, Poissy Road, a couple of days before they drove him to Salt Pond to commence his work at the headquarters of the UGCC. And when he came, this man discovered that there were 13 branches, very inactive branches. So there was nothing you could call a party, just the name. So he drew up a master plan and presented it to the UGCC leadership. And they told him that they would not be prepared to support that. Do you know why they would not be prepared to support that? Because Nkrumah had earmarked places from Accra to Kulungugu, which included Volta region, Ashanti, North, everywhere. And they said that no, the one thing we are doing is
it's a Gold Coast
yes,
affair.
It's a Gold Coast.
Limited to the Gold Coast.
And you see, the leadership that we mentioned, if you are to go back, George Alfred Grant was the chairman or president, first vice or first chairman, vice chairman or vice president was R.S. Blay. And then the second was Pa Grant. So the mistake people made by saying that J.B. Dankwa founded UGCC is not true. Even within UGCC, he was the third in command, not the first or second. First was Grant, the second R.S. Blay, the third, the man you mentioned, J.B. Dankwa. You understand? Then we had Awuno Williams, we had Nanka Bruce, then we had Kwame Nkrumah, who became General Secretary, Obechebi Lamte, Pa William Oforiata, then Edward Ekufo Addo.
So this was the UGCC.
So you will see that this UGCC leadership is strictly made up of people from the Gold Coast. And what do you mean by the Gold Coast? In those days, the Gold Coast was made up of Western Province. The Western Province is today Western and Central regions.
Okay.
And now Western region has been broken into two. Then the Eastern Province was, what do you call it? Greater Accra and Eastern region. You understand? So that was the Gold Coast they were comfortable with.
Ashanti wasn't in it.
Ashanti was a protectorate.
Yes.
Transvolta, the same. Northern territories, the same.
So in modern day Ghana, this would be Western, Central, Greater Accra, Eastern. That was the Gold Coast.
That was the Gold Coast. And that was what they had in mind. You know, the other part, which is today part of Ghana, was not within their thinking or bothering, nothing. That was why they did not bring in Ashanti leaders. Because at that time, Victor Usu was a thriving Ashanti lawyer. Buzia was a famous Ashanti academic. But they were not interested. They were not interested. So let us come to think about people who came to hate Nkrumah, like Araram Ponsah, Akoto, Buzia himself. Where would you have been in terms of politics but for Kwame Nkrumah, who drew a program embracing the whole nation?
So when they rejected that program, what happened?
When they rejected that program, this is a very good question. When they rejected that program, Nkrumah told them that he so desperately needed every part of the country such that even if you won't pay me, I can go about doing the work without any money.
Pro bono.
Pro bono, I would do that because we need all of them in order that we will form the entity called Ghana. And the reason why Nkrumah will say that is that, you see, the people he was working with had had all their training in the UK, which is a very small island. And it was a world of its own. Kwame Nkrumah had his training in the United States of America, a continent called the country. You understand? So the Ghana or the Gold Coast he came to meet, for him, was less than one state in the US. And you want to call this a country. What are you talking about?
Need the numbers.
Numbers. And then the second thing that also influenced Nkrumah's idea. You know, Nkrumah was a lecturer in African studies, you know, Black history in Europe. And through that, he had learned about this scramble for Africa, which these people would not bother about. He felt that it was a scramble for Africa that partitioned Africa, the Berlin Conference that partitioned Africa. So any good politician should be able to do something that would undo what the Berlin Conference had done. So this man, you think he had a small head, it was just too big for anybody to conceptualize. You know, when they were thinking about, Pa Grant was thinking about his business interests, J.B. Dankwa thinking about his law practice, name them. This Kwame Nkrumah was thinking about a continent.
I think he was reversing what had been the diminution, because you started from the APRS, which was huge, Pan-African, then it came down to the British West Africa, and then down to Gold Coast, and then Nkrumah is reversing the progress.
So those who are mathematicians, I believe they will know how to draw the sketches.
Now we are going back up.
So that was the idea.
So what the UGCC's what were the achievements?
The UGCC, the achievement of the UGCC, a great achievement. The fact that they were able to form the first political entity that dreamed about independence. Because they said self-government within the shortest time. No matter how long it would have taken it was still different from National Congress of Britain West Africa or Aborigines Right Protection. It was the real idea of getting independence for us. And don't worry much about that. The vision of the pioneers was a bit narrow, but at least it was a great achievement. Then
Would you call them as founders as well? Would you list them as founders?
I would list them as founders. I would never leave them, but they were proto-nationalists.
How do you mean?
That is, they were not that radical. They were not that radical. No, they were not that radical. So I would not take them off people like those who belong to NCBWA and ARPS.
Yes.
They were about the same.
Okay.
But what made Nkrumah different from them was the fact that he didn't study all in the UK. You understand? So it means when Nkrumah arrived on the Gold Coast, he didn't have classmates among the colonial system. 2, Kwame Nkrumah studied in a former colony, that is United States of America.
Yeah.
3, Nkrumah studied together with black people, a lot of black people, and he didn't attend the famous university. He attended a predominantly black university, Lincoln University.
So his outlook was completely different.
Completely different, black, to the extent that it made him to naturally hate white people. And then those black people he met over there, introduced him to socialism, where being a socialist or a communist, you always felt that the man on the top is an enemy to the masses down. So when Nkrumah came down here, his perception of issues was completely different from everybody he came to meet. No classmate here, apart from people like Bedema and others who attended Achimota with him. So it also influenced him. So the classmates he would think about were those who attended secondary school with him in Ghana. So he called them to himself, and they were people from different ethnic groups. And then also, because he started setting up offices across the country
against the wishes of the
UGCC, it means that those who would cluster to him will be people of national dimension. You get Bedema from Volta region, you get Mahama from the north, you get Krobodisa from Ashanti. Father, all of them, yes. Initially, he was with the NPP people, then later came Northern People's Party. They saw him and then quickly left and came to him. Krobodisa from Ashanti, at that time, this man, Vito Usu, they belonged to the Ashanti, Ashanti Youth Association. So when they saw that this man who has arrived is thinking of a country for all of us, and not only the Southerners, immediately decided that they would be part of him. So later, within a very short period of time, Kwame Nkrumah had become an institution rather than an individual. And he became a man of many parts, that when you see Nkrumah, you see people from everywhere. You understand?
That was a master stroke, bringing in other people from the area, apart from just the
coast, the so-called Gold Coast.
Yes.
You understand? So it made him an institution instantly. That, let me also say, that when Nkrumah arrived, he made friends with this man, Nikwabena Boni, the famous Usuala Tamanche. Because he said that when he came here, there was nothing political. And for Nkrumah, everything political means violence, because he felt that the land did not belong to them. So if you are driving away somebody who is a foreigner who has taken your land, it's not a matter of negotiations, and it's not a matter of soft talk. No, you have to use violence to push away the man. And that was why Nikwabena Boni, who was a very famous Gold Coast merchant, and then a famous chief who had worked in the cocoa industry, traveled to almost every part of the country, and the chiefs knew him very well. Nkrumah identified him. And so they planned the so-called Gold Coast boycott of European goods. It was planned towards the end of the year 1947 to the beginning of the year 1948.
Nkrumah hit the ground running. I mean, he came to Ghana in Gold Coast on the 10th of
December
47.
Yeah,
And by
January, February.
he was already organizing this.
Yes,
He didn't waste
within
much time.
3 months, they organizing.
He didn't waste time.
Yes. So whenever you mention the name Nikwabena Boni, Nkrumah's name should come there. He was always, and he didn't want to come up much because he was working under other people. He was the general secretary of a party. He was not the leader. And then you could see that outside the leadership was where he had his support and his understanding, and you see, Nikwabena Boni was such a brilliant person. Why? Kwabena Boni made Nkrumah to be aware that if you want to succeed, please don't follow the educated people you have come to meet, but the ordinary people in the streets.
Are those the veranda boys?
Later we'll come to that. Ordinary people.
So the ordinary folk.
The very, very ordinary people, they will help you. So they identify the ordinary people. They are the common people who will go to shops and buy. The rich people, they'll go to shop once and maybe a month, they won't go there. Or even they'll go directly to buy from wholesale. So when Kwabena Boni was able to organize the Ghanaian masses not to buy European goods, or the shops were closed down completely, looting European shops here and there. And it succeeded. And then they met a king. The thing is coming to an end. You can't tell the people that perpetually they shouldn't buy European goods. Eventually they need the goods. So what will you do? Then Nkrumah and his friend Akwaje identified another potent force. What is it? The Second World War had ended, and the Gold Coasters or Ghanaians who were sent to the war to fight had been brought home and demobilized. Some wounded, many of them, it's in 1939 to 45. So having stayed away so many years, you won't come and find your wife the same. Your daughter the same. This daughter you were taking care of. By the time you came, somebody had impregnated. If I had been here, this thing wouldn't have happened. And then somebody had married your wife because she thought you were
going to die.
Or the wife is waiting for you, but he has got 2 children in your absence. See, these people had their family life completely broken down, highly traumatized. And every evening they will converge along the beach, Jamestown, and drink and remember their stories, wartime, and then weep. And how their lives have been useless. You come and your own people are driving you from the homes because they thought you went to the white man's land and you brought money. Now you brought wounds. You didn't bring anything apart from a military uniform. Then Nkrumah, who had studied socialism, backed by his friend Nikwabena Boni, and then the famous lawyer, Akwaje, decided to take advantage of the situation. So without anybody having sent them, Nkrumah and Akwaje went and organized the ex-service men and told them that we came from the UK and we know how much has been given to soldiers like you. You fought alongside the white man. Sure. So why should he get an estate and then what Ghanaians now called ex gratia? And then you look at your plight. And so on this day, they make the day 28 February 1948. We are going to the Castle Christian Book, present a petition to the governor, and then they will pay you. Would they pay and say, yes, this is coming from the UGCC. It's coming from the UGCC. And we are told that Nkrumah wrote it in his hand, which many people don't know. Nkrumah wrote it in his hand.
The petition.
The petition. And it was Akwaje, who was dictating the West. Do you know why? He was a lawyer.
So put it in the right language.
Yes, and then Nkrumah would do the scribe work. So they did it and handed it over to the ex-service men, and then they ran away.
So they were actually the architects behind it.
They were the architects. And Nkrumah knew that. And they said, make sure you don't put it to anybody's hand. Look, when you reach the crossroad, the security man will stop you and say that whatever petition you give it to us, we'll send it to the governor. Don't agree. Say you want to see the governor yourself. You know, what they didn't know was that Nkrumah had just plotted violence, that there will be bloodshed, and that bloodshed would reverberate everywhere, and that will usher us into the liberty we were seeking.
Wasn't that a cold-hearted, callous stratagem by
when
Osagyefo?
God wanted to save the world, he brought his only begotten son to be killed. You understand? We are told that when Kofi Anokye wanted the Ashantis to get their freedom from Denchira, a certain chief, you understand, was killed.
So some violence is allowed for liberation.
Oh, Master, there has to be, whatever you are doing, you should be
Consequences.
very dedicated to that cause. And Nkrumah felt that until blood has been spilled, there will never be liberation or salvation. So that was what happened. So when the people pressed on and they got to the Osun Crossroads, then that Sergeant Emery came up and then stopped them. They realized what Nkrumah had told them, that the man said,
Don't listen to
we should
anybody.
go forward. So they moved on, that they wanted to hit the castle grounds. He said, nobody would permit you. It means you are going to overthrow the government of the day. So definitely there will be fireworks. And they killed some of our people. Nkrumah and Nikwabena Boni and Akwaje had already spoken to the organized labor at that time, roughly called TUC. You know, the mine workers union, the railway workers union. He had already alerted them. So the moment it hit, people got around that they have killed some Gold Coasters. This is why people have killed them. The strike started from every part of the country. So they were surprised that, why should this thing happen on the Gold Coast?
It was carefully coordinated.
Carefully coordinated by somebody. And because it was in the General Secretary's hand, they knew that it was the UGCC. So they started rounding them up. And Nankan Bruce was not immediately available. R.S. Blay was not available. Park Grant was not available. And those who were in Accra, around Accra, immediately they got them. And they were, of course, Kwame Nkrumah, Akwaje, and then J.B. Dankwa, Obechebi Lamte, Edward Kufuor, and then William Oforiatta.
The 6 gentlemen on our currency.
So the 6 gentlemen.
So that is the reason
the
why
following
we have
day, the newspapers captured the story. Big 6 arrested. Big 6 arrested.
So it's a media creation.
Media creation, because they were not the Big 6 leaders of the UGCC, because we started from somewhere. And that somewhere told us that the leader of the UGCC was Park Grant, who was still alive at that time, because he died in 1956.
So if he had been around for that arrest, he would have been added to this. It could have been Big 7.
You understand? And then Auno Williams too. And then Nankan Bruce too.
It could have been Big 9.
Yeah, so the handful who were got and then apprehended, said Big 6 arrested. And then when they went to the police station to write their statement, all of them, including Akwaje, denied knowledge of what had taken place.
Akwaje planned this thing with Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes, because it was not his handwriting. It was easier for him to say, I don't know anything.
The lawyer escaped.
Yeah, they were, and that's what most lawyers do. Their clients will be incarcerated in prison, and they will pick their files, their dockets, and then leave.
And if they will pay their fee, then they go and enjoy the fee.
They go and enjoy. So that was what happened that day. Somebody died, somebody was arrested. Others said that, no, we don't know anything about it. So after this scenario, they set up the Kusi Constitutional Committee. They set it up to investigate the disturbances and the violence that had occurred on the Gold Coast. Could you believe that on this Kusi committee, the members were rather the other 4 people and all other people on the Gold Coast, minus Akwaje and Kwame Nkrumah.
The so-called Big 6?
They found places on the committee sittings to draw up a new constitution for the country. These people were part of it, and Kwame Nkrumah and then Akwaja, they identified that you
were part of the action. Oh, okay.
So they threw him away, and he had to be forced to come back to his friend Kwame Nkrumah. But let's talk about that. Was 1948. So when Nkrumah saw this hatred going on, he was still the general secretary because CPP wasn't founded in 1948.
No, it wasn't.
So he was still with them. When he came back from prison in the north, he was with them. And don't forget, you see the smoke he used to take independence for us. When they released him, he was wearing a white shirt which was completely soiled. And the northern chief called him. They drove to his cottage and then gave him something better to wear. So that was where it was a souvenir for him. He kept. And then on Independence Day, he exhibited.
Oh, nice.
Now, back home in Salt Pond, they held a big meeting after everybody had been released that you, Kwame Nkrumah, we are ready to pay you to transport you back to the UK and then to enable you complete your PhD thesis. Choose between that one and a demotion from General Secretary to Treasurer of the party. And we are told that Nkrumah told all his friends, you understand, like Bedeme and Botu, who had also become his own scribes. No, he was a scribe to the UGCC leadership, and he also had these scribes behind him, that he felt that instead of abandoning them to go back, let him accept the treasurer position so that he continue to be in the country, continue to be in the party, and eventually he will know what to do. And at that time, so you see, the founders of this country, there was a man called Mr. Pobi Baini from Second D. And then Otumfuo Osei Ajiman Prempeh, the second, had already had a word with Kwame Nkrumah. You think tribalism doesn't work? Tribalism works. So he had called Kwame Nkrumah to his palace and told him that these Achin people you are following, they are no good people. You know, the Ashanti Empire days, we ruled almost everybody in Ghana. Now, as I'm saying, I'm sitting here, and then one of these people will come and rule me, especially an Achin man. Why an Achin man? Because at that time, this man had become a judge, R.S. Blaine. And then this man too, Pa Grant, was a very old man and not very well educated. So eyes were on J.B. Dankwa, who had so many family members in the party. So if anything, he would be the person to be elected as their leader. And Asante had got to know that he would not want any Gold Coaster to come and become the leader of the new Ghana Nkrumah was building. And then too, where you come from, the Nzema people, many years ago, we were war allies. That's why they call you Nzema Kotoko. And we are Asante Kotoko. So I am giving you my own Ashanti Youth Association, led by Araram Ponsa, Vito Wusu and Krobo Ebise, and then Jantwa, F.A. Jantwa, and then, yes, Franklin Adubobi, Jantwa, and then KSP, Kwame Sanapoku, Jantwa, to follow you. So go and break away, don't join them. And these people had followed Nkrumah to Salt Pond. So when Nkrumah told them that they had called him up there, he was climbing up, and he had taken his decision. And down there, they were making noise. And then somebody among the big people started, who is that foolish Valanda boy making noise over there? You understand? From among the UGCC leadership up on the story building. And then the common people who had surrounded,
the masses.
Somebody was making us shouting over his voice. I believe he said, Kwame Nkrumah, want to me
You can't do him anything.
And then somebody, who is that veranda boy? And they said that the Nkrumah adopted the name. I remember a very elderly Ghanaian man also told me that Nkrumah had earlier adopted the name Veranda Boy. because when he came, he was lodging with Akwaje, who was already married. And he, Nkrumah, was not married. So, and the house was not big. So Nkrumah said, me, I would accept to sleep on the veranda. And these people were sleeping. And then they started calling him Veranda Boy. So whatever it was a CPP appellation. It became part of the CPP people that they were Veranda Boys. Now, the Ashanti group, it was actually the Ashanti group that told Nkrumah that, look, you are going up there to resign, whether you like it or not. You won't go outside the country. You won't become a treasurer. You are going to resign. And somebody, an elderly person, told me that he still remembers the words of Jantua. Inti wo kwa resign. A friend said, wo kwa treasurer no. Wo kwa treasurer no.
Are you going to accept the treasury
position? And then instantly, somebody was sent to go and buy writing pad. You know writing pad? Because you are
I'm an old school guy.
And one of the Veranda Boys will have to bend this way. And then Nkrumah was made to write a letter. They stood on him, as our language would put it. They stood on him. Write it that you have resigned.
So he used his back as a writing desk.
Writing desk. So as he was climbing up there going, the leadership of the UGCC knew he was either going to be transported back to where he came from or to be a treasurer. And then he knew he was going to resign. So when he got there, he gave them the letter. And then they got angry because they discovered that that was not what they wanted. So immediately they told him, now you have been sacked. Well, they wanted the records in their own books to read that he had been.
But that wasn't valid, because if you put your letter there as a resignation, you can't sack me. I've already resigned.
He said, I've resigned. This letter shows up. Exactly. And they too, in their minutes, they said, today we have sacked you from the party. So he came back and then left Salt Pond, went back to Takwa, where he met a sizable number of people, and then they decided to form a political party. And then he told them, with the ideas he brought, that not many of our people are educated. So if you have a long name like UGCC, not many people can pronounce it. So it should be short. So talking about it, he said they shouldn't also depart from the word convention, because those days, because our people are always religious, they say every year the religious people
have
convention,
Easter convention,
this convention. So this political convention too was given that we should not depart from that. So they didn't depart from the word convention, and it was easier for everybody to pronounce convention because church people convention. So it became Convention People's Party, CPP, which everybody could pronounce. Self-government now. Which is easier for everybody, SGN.
It was a remix of self-government within the shortest possible
time. Because they were kicking against that one. They were rebelling and revolting against that one. So they had the CPP. Now, when they had the CPP, you see, the following year, they founded CPP in 1949. You see, Nkrumah still felt that it's only violence that will save the country. So don't forget, we started from the 1947 boycott, then 1948 riots, then 1950 positive action. So you see the idea of Nkrumah, that nobody should go to work. Nobody should go to work. All civil servants should stay at home. And he had a newspaper that circulated everywhere called the People's Evening News. So the date that he put, everybody accepted it. And then there was a general sit-down strike in the country. And what happened? It was Nkrumah and his CPP leaders who had organized this. Nkrumah, as destiny will have it, I've mentioned one advantage he had. Because he didn't have any profession, that was why he was able to do mobilization. And without money, because the chiefs and ordinary people were inviting him to their homes to eat. So he never had money in his pocket, but he was also never hungry, because everybody was feeding him wherever he went. They were feeding him, giving him clothes everywhere. So you see that if he had passed the law entrance examination, upon returning from the UK, he would have been just like J.B. Dankwa,
The lawyer.
Akwaje and others, and that would have been the end of him. And in 1957, we wouldn't have had our independence. So sometimes misfortune is a fortune.
It's indeed. And so if you fast forward to 1957, before 1957, where we are was still called Gold Coast, wasn't it?
Gold Coast. So it means that now CPP has branches everywhere in the country. So UGCC was also forced to have branches everywhere in the country. But then CPP had already taken over the entire country.
What was the status of the Northern Territories, the Ashanti Protectorate, and the Transvolta Togoland? Were they part of Gold Coast by that time?
Part of the Gold Coast. The UGCC was able to campaign in the north, telling them that you northern people, the white man drew this imaginary boundary between the north and the south. So no, as at the time, in the 1940s, no school in the north, because the white people were smart, that when they introduced school education in the south among the Fanti people, they started producing lawyers and people who started giving them problems.
Challenging them.
That was one of the reasons why they quickly moved the capital from Cape Coast to Accra, where they will have their peace of mind.
Fewer lawyers also.
Yes. And also they skimmed the whole coast and realized that they will have peace in Accra, even though the terrain was very bad. But going to everywhere to the far east will not help them. To the far west, people were well educated. It will not help them. So they settled at the center in Accra. And no schools in the north. So UGCC campaigned that you should rather put up a strong case that you want your own country. Because if you assist the whole country to become independent, appointment of ministers, directors, big appointment, you will not fit in.
Because you're not educated?
You are not educated. And you will serve your own black man. So it would have been better we all continue serving the white man, rather than he living and you serving the southerner. So immediately the people understood and they formed the Northern People's Party, Dombo. They formed their own party, agitating that they either form their own party or they should allow them to create a federalism so that there will be a different set of people, or they should leave them to form their own country. Then they campaigned the same way in Transvolta, Togo, SG Anto. Because at that time, because of the end of the Second World War, these people were still part of Ghana. But the UN, after the First World War, it was not the League of Nations has stated that these people should be made to be on their own or to join their brothers. But the British realized, and the cover results state that the people in that region were very hard working, that they should not be allowed to leave. And it was a special advice even given to Nkrumah that he should not allow the people of Transvolta, Togoland to leave. They were very hard working. They could work in the army, in the police, and as very good civil servants, more than the rest. So they shouldn't allow them to go. You understand? But SG Anto and his people also wanted a space for his own. And so the UGCC people would campaign there. So it means that they were able to get people of like minds to work against the the convention people.
What was their strategy for Ashanti?
The strategy for Ashanti. They told the Asantehene that before your empire fell, you were ruling all these people, everybody among the Akans. When the white man goes, other people are going to rule you. But when you have your own country, or at least a federal system of government, you control your money, your wealth, your people, everything. And Asantehene bought into that.
What was Kwame Nkrumah's counter-argument?
Nkrumah's counter-argument was centralism. For all of us should form one country. And the moment you think about federalism, the wealth of that region will go to that region. But don't forget that this region where your wealth is not going, maybe they have better manpower, resource than you. Or where you think, take it this way, you have cocoa. And at that time, Ashanti and Braf were one region, and they were the leading producer region of cocoa. But Nkrumah too can put in the argument that the Kosombo Dam, before independence, the dam, the plan was already there. If the map is built, it's not in your region.
No.
It's in somebody's region.
And the harbors are even in different regions.
Different regions.
How do you export your cocoa?
And then bauxite and then manganese and those, they are not in your region. So for us to be called a country, for us to enjoy, there must be one central society. So that was Nkrumah's idea.
And then, of course, we have to get to Independence Day, 6th March 1957. What were the arguments that went into the naming of the country Ghana right now? Who took that decision?
Before you go to 1957, let me say something. Because we are talking about founders.
Yes, who founded Ghana?
You see, K.A. Gbedema. The colonial government met Gbedema. Because I told you he was lucky Gbedema didn't go to jail with him. They met him and told him that your man is always violent here and there. So we want him to rot in jail. We want to give you money and all the resources you need. This is Gbedema's last interview before he died. He said, so you go everywhere, campaign for yourself, and you become the leader of the CPP. And that man, let's all forget him. He's bringing Eastern ideas here and there. He's not a good man. So Gbedema says, when they gave him the money and the vehicles, vans, and other resources, that was where he realized how influential Nkrumah was and the extent to which the colonial government feared Kwame Nkrumah. You see his idea. Look at how he interpreted it. When they gave him the leadership on silver platter, he rather felt he had to continue to be obedient, loyal to his boss. And he said he gave it a different interpretation altogether, that if you can come to me and then you see that I should go and do this, it means you know that I can do it. And at the same time, if you say Nkrumah should rot in jail, it means you're fear
scared of him. Yeah.
So Gbedema said he took all the resources, and that gingered him to campaign more. And he realized that most parts of Ghana followed their chiefs, and the chiefs were aligning with the UGCC, the Matimehu people. So to be on the safer side, he looked at where in Accra, where Nkrumah, the CPP was most popular. So he made one man, Ladi Nylander, who was a CPP candidate for Accra Central. Gbedema persuaded him to step aside so that Nkrumah would stand. And at that time, the constitution did not bar prisoners from contesting. So you see the wisdom of K. Gbedema. He didn't go to university. He ended at Achimota. But look at his wisdom, that there is only one thing that will bring Nkrumah back from prison: when the people have elected him as their leader.
Because, of course, he represents the people.
And then the 1951 election, Nkrumah won overwhelmingly.
So Gbedema, how did he switch because you have to know who is on the ballot.
He disagreed and then put Nkrumah's picture. They were communicating, they were going to prison to communicate with him. So they told him what he done. He signed everything. They were, smuggling papers to him. He signed that he was the candidate, which history says he was. And then he won Accra Central.
Is that what is now we call...
Odio.
That is the constituency that Nkrumah won.
Yes.
In prison.
That was Nkrumah's own constituency. So when he came, he developed that place more. His own constituency. So you see the General Post Office headquarters, the GNTC headquarters was there, and then ABSA, but now ABSA.
Yeah, all those banks.
That was his constituency. Okay. So he was very sensitive to the area. Second, but for them, he would have been nobody. The people of
Lighthouse, everywhere.
He would have been nobody. They made him who he was. And then his friend Gbedema too.
So he came out of prison?
He came as leader of government businesses. 1951. Then 1952 he became prime minister. You understand? Then the British people wanted to prolong their stay here. They said that the 1951 election showed various ethnic groups metamorphosing into political parties. So we want parties that are not tribally based.
So broad-based.
So there will be another election. So that was why the National Liberation Movement, Transvoter, all this MP, Northern People's Party, they came together and formed what you call the United Party
UP.
to challenge the Convention People's Party. So if we are talking about traditions, United Party was a tradition made up of the Ewe-based Transvoter Togoland Party, led by S.G. Anto, the Northern People's Party, the man Dombo. The Northern People's Party
was led
by Dombo. And then the National Liberation Movement led by Bafo Akoto.
How about the Gans? Did the Gans also have a...
Gans Shifi Mokwe.
Okay.
Because they said everybody is taking their land. So in the end, they all metamorphosed into one party against the CPP. But many of their leaders had left to join the CPP. At every side you could see had left to join the Convention People's Party. So there was a need for more elections. There was after 51, there was a 54. And still they wanted to test whether Nkrumah was actually popular, just to delay us. And then 56 won, which gave us the independence. So traveling to this level. And then on the day we were taking the independence, watch the days. It was only CPP leaders that declared independence, because we know that the leader of the opposition, Buzia, had studied in Oxford, and he liked the white people, the British people. He didn't want them to go. And there was an article he wrote, "Are you leaving us so soon?" Which Ghanaians know that he felt independence should not have been rushed. And as he is in his grave, he still thinks that we shouldn't have rushed to get our independence.
How do you know that?
But he was a British-minded. And then come to talk about J.B. Danker. He became politically insignificant when Buzia came up. The reason why they put Buzia there was that Buzia was already a professor. And then Anto was a teacher. And then Dombo to a trained teacher. So because of superior education, they put Buzia there as their leader. But with the coming up of Buzia, and where I started telling you about tribalism, you see, Bono and Asante were one region. So Buzia was seen as an Ashanti man. So the Asante Hene would prefer Buzia to J.B. Dankwa. You understand? So as soon as the United Party was formed, J.B. Dankwa started becoming politically insignificant, diminishing completely.
Who made the decision to name Ghana Ghana?
The decision to name Ghana Ghana is something that everybody should know without question. And let me start from the beginning. You see, during the 48 riots, students and teachers from the 3 noted boys' schools in Cape Coast, at the Saddle, Augustins, and Infante Pim, many of them had gone to town to join in the riots against the colonial government. And immediately the white people, realizing what was happening, it was white people who were teachers in those days and headmasters, they locked up the gates and then did a roll call. So all teachers and students who were caught outside gate around that time, when you don't have reason, but means you went to support that thing. And so they were sacked. And the Committee of Inquiry stated that they should not be admitted. And then Kwame Nkrumah went there to address these frustrated teachers and students. And then they felt that he, at that time being the General Secretary of the UGCC, could conveniently speak to the colonial administration to overturn their decision. Then Kwame Nkrumah told them, why do I have to beg a white man on my own land? If you will listen to me, it will help you. We are going to look for some building, somebody's house, and then we'll start a new school and give it a name that will become the name of the future country we are building.
Back in 48.
Back in 1948, somebody's uncompleted building. They started a new school over there called Ghana National College, Osagyefo's own school. So why do you allow someone to tell you that Ghana came from somewhere? Kwame Nkrumah himself, I told you, was a professor of black history in America. So he knew the ancient empire of Ghana, just as he knew the Berlin Conference and wanted us to go back to the beginning. He had read our history that the Gold Coast was a name that was used by the people who were stealing our gold away. So they gave it that name. You know, look at how it is. It's like you are a very rich man. I always get money from you. And then I call you Sikenino, that rich man. So you may think it's a nice appellation, but the person is telling you are a fool. Then when I come and get your money, I go, I get your money. So Nkrumah, why should you call our land the Gold Coast? Because you are enriching yourselves here. So we go back to that famous ancient empire. And that was in 1948, 9 clear years before we had our independence.
So did he submit this name to the authorities that this is the name we wanted to?
He submitted to it. And one good thing, incidentally, when he submitted, and then on that day when he moved the motion, we call
Destiny.
it the motion of destiny, the leader of the opposition, K.A. Buzia, also supported the idea that we'll be independent so and so date, and then the country will be called that. So please, if it was any person, Buzia, in fact, founded a party just before independence, which he called Ghana Congress Party. It was simply because it had spread everywhere that the country's name would be called Ghana. So he also chose the name Ghana Congress Party. So he came to buy into Nkrumah's idea. But undoubtedly, if somebody could form a party in 1947 and call it United Gold Coast Convention, and another person could form a school in 1948 and call it Ghana National College, and then we win independence in 1957 and we call the country Ghana, then you should know that the man who called the country Ghana knew the name he would give to it because he was the one who started using it earlier on before everybody.
We've taken a journey that has lasted hundreds of years from the founding of the Ghana Empire up until the founding of the Republic of Ghana, all in a quest to answer the simple question, who founded Ghana? What is your conclusion?
My conclusion is that if you want to answer the vexed question, who founded Ghana, go back to people who never had in mind giving us freedom, but the nature of their calling was such that they could be added to that subsection called the founders. And I've already mentioned Ekem Ferguson. Come to talk about this man, Philip Kweku, who became the first black Anglican priest, was the first African to have studied in Oxford. He didn't stay there. He came here and set up a school. Come to talk about Jacobus Kaptein, who studied in Holland, was given European name, Dutch name. He was so brilliant, and he was the first black person in the world to have become a Protestant priest. They wanted him to stay there because he knew Latin, he knew Dutch, German, English, all the European language. He said, no, I want to go and work in the country where I come from. He came here, set up a school, and became the first person to have started translating the Bible into the Fante language. Come to talk about Aggrey, who in the 1921-22, he became the trustee of the Philip Stokes Foundation in the US, a fund set up for the upliftment of black people through education. So the American government brought him to Africa, and he went to South Africa, Congo, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Ghana, all projecting black education. Can you talk about founders and leave such a person out? Now come to talk about Mensah Saba, who defined land in a manner that would stand up to our day. Those who funded the nationalists. Come to talk about Akwaje, whom God used to bring in Kwame Nkrumah. Come to talk about K.A. Bedema, who, if he had been a greedy and selfish person, could have become the leader of the party. And I believe the white man is it's always a very smart person. If Bedema had accepted what they were offering him, eventually the history of Ghana would have been different. They would have ditched he himself too, because Nkrumah's absence would have balkanized CPP into something else. Come to talk about Nana Sewase Agyeman Prempeh, who made Nkrumah strong because of the Ashanti Youth Association. Now go back. Come to talk about the Nzima chief called King Kekuaka, who was killed at Cape Coast Castle because he read the bond of 1844 that the Fanti chiefs had and the Denchira and Asin chief had signed. And reading it, not that he reading, they read it to him, and they were sending the whole thing to the entire coast that every chief should endorse. And when they read it to him, he told them that, but this is a mark of slavery. What you have read to me, if that is what my friends have signed, then they have signed away their freedom. And this man was arrested, brought to Cape Coast Castle, tried, and sentenced to solitary confinement, and died there. So when you go to Cape Coast Castle, you have three graves: Letitia Yee London, Captain George McLean, and then this man, King Kekuaka. Come to talk about the famous Ameto, Raphael Grill Ameto, a Ghanaian, a Gold Coast scholar, who in 1947, at the tender age of 33, was one of the greatest scientists in the world and was invited to the Nobel Peace Prize Laureum, and was one black person, the only black person there, and more than 1,000 white scientists. And the following year, he was runner-up to Nobel Peace Prize Science section. Are you saying that you can leave him out of the founders? Because people like this made us to know that we can also aspire to wherever the white man is. And Ameto was one of only 3 men in the world who knew the secret formula of the atomic bomb. And he was a black man, and he was a Ghanaian. Can you leave him out? Ameto was the first person in the world to have written 3 books in 3 international languages: German, French, English. You can't leave him out. Come to talk about Ephraim Emu. His whole life was the one that propelled us to where we are. And it influenced Kwame Nkrumah because he was a teacher at Akropong Training College. And they realized that this man had translated all the hymns into Twi. And one thing, he was an Ewe man who didn't understand a single Twi because of the fact that Twi was influential and he wanted to influence his country. He learned Akwapim Twi from the people and understood it and used it with an expert efficiency. And everything in his house was African. He didn't use glass. He used calabash. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't drink beer. He would drink, palm wine. Mm-hmm. And they saw him and they sacked him from the school. And he said, me, I don't care. I will always be an African. And started composing plenty songs, pushing everywhere. Look at Yenara Assassin. And then more. Ejanume niye din for manya depe janchiri me damuasi mamu mo. Yeah, damuasi mamu mo. And then he continues. Osushi muara, oriashe muara, okomde muara, mo brebre yinara, mo mayenya biejino, ejanu mo, ejanu mo. Can you take away this man? Mm. You can't. And then I've mentioned our great-grandmother, Ya Asantewaa, who, as a woman, was able to mobilize Ashantis who had otherwise been vanquished by the British, and they were sitting down hopeless and then without anything to imagine apart from going to hold a conference and bringing the golden stool to the white man so that they will have their peace of mind. After all, the king himself had been taken to Seychelles, and the woman got up and said, hey, you men, this is what you are going to do. You are lying. We are going to fight. Nobody will go anywhere. And with the start of the war, those people who knew where the golden stool was hiding and would have shown the white men were all killed by troops from Offenso. So it means that the golden stool got lost for a while. And so even though Ashanti was defeated, the aim of Yasantua was actually realized to protect the gold. Can you talk about great men of Ghana, founders without hair? But I will conclude by saying that in every country in this world, we learn history in order to remember their celebrities. But all such countries have also got one founder which becomes the primus inter pares.
First among equals.
Among equals. And to that extent, when you mention India, you talk of Mahatma Gandhi. Russia, Peter the Great. And then US,
George
Washington. South Africa, Mandela. Ivory Coast, Hofua Boigny. And so in Ghana, you talk of Kwame Nkrumah. Professor Mills, of blessed memory. Please, he was a professor of law, and he knew why he felt he had to create an independence create a holiday for that man called Kwame Nkrumah, and named it the Founders Day. Founder apostrophe
S.
before S, because he was the founder of the nation. Ghana was founded on 6 March 1957 by a man called Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And he felt that with that, the whole Africa would see it as something to emulate. No wonder, therefore, that after he created the holiday for Kwame Nkrumah, South Africa also created the World Mandela Day for Nelson Mandela. Why wouldn't you argue that South Africa would not think about Robert Sobukwe, Walter Sisulu, Bantu Biko, and others?
All those guys.
No. Everybody has one founder, and it does not cause any injury, no harm, when you recognize the true founder of the nation. After all, you too, whatever you will do, you will be remembered. As I sit here, I remember Professor K.A. Buzia as the first Ghanaian professor of the University of Ghana. And I also remember Professor Anton William Amo, the first black scholar who flourished in Germany. I remember J.B. Dankwa as a man who flourished a lot in his writings, the African concept of God. He tried to interpret the Mawu in Ewe, the Tanyomo in Ghana, and then the Akan one, that Nyame, Winyanwa, Wame, and Obiawe, Nyam, Nyankopo, Nyame, Ayo. You recognize all of them. And so when somebody too has to be recognized as the founder of the nation, I believe that there should be no argument about that.
So yeah, Onochie Frimpong, this has been a fascinating dive into history and the question, who founded Ghana? You have answered it, and I thank you so much.
I hope I've answered it.
Yes. It remains to see, what do you make of the conclusion of this question, who founded Ghana? Put your comments down below. Let's have a conversation. And thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so the next time fresh content comes, you will be the first to get access to it. My name is Kafui Day. God bless you.